souls to Jesus by the service that I yield.
One of the things I began to notice when I moved up to Michigan several years ago was the vehicles that you see people driving on the road. Many of these vehicles had long streaks of rust along the bottom of the car, of the truck. And I was informed that this is caused by salt. See, because of the weather conditions up here, there is a lot of snow, a lot of ice, roads become treacherous, and they put salt on the roads in order to melt the ice. But as the ice melts, the salt mixes with the water and then finds itself deposited, water, salt, and all, on the bottom of vehicles. Once it's there, if it's not taken care of, it can erode the paint and expose the metal beneath, and the exposed metal in turn begins to rust. And if this is left unchecked, I have seen vehicles that I think the rust was the only thing holding them together because the problem just wasn't addressed. But all that damage was caused because of salt. And that got me to thinking of something that Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men." Notice the effect that Jesus is implying that salt has. He calls us the salt of the earth. When I noticed those rusty spots on vehicles and was informed as to what caused them, I looked a little bit into the nature of salt. And I came to discover that as a compound, salt has some unique properties. That it changes everything it comes in contact with. It has an effect on everything it touches. Many times this effect is good. It makes certain foods more flavorful. It is a preservative. It has properties that are capable of killing certain types of bacteria that can turn out to be dangerous to us. But it also has a corrosive nature to it. It can destroy things as well as enhance things. Now you can think to yourself right now, well, what does that have to do with what Jesus said? Jesus wants us to teach a good message, a positive, encouraging message to people. What does this negative aspects of salt have to do with any of that? Well, we also find that in the Bible. Even if we just looked at the ministry of Jesus himself, we can see this. There are many people who received his message. There are many people who would follow him, who would want to hear more, who needed to hear more. But the ones that we're more familiar with are the people who didn't like what Jesus said. The people who had a negative reaction. It was as if the words of Christ himself somehow corroded something of their nature to the point that they felt this almost uncontrollable need to just reject it, to verbally dismember it, to somehow encourage people not to respond. We see that in the writings of the apostles and other disciples throughout the New Testament. There were people who responded in a positive way. There were people who responded in a negative way. And that got me to thinking about the nature of salt. When he tells us we are the salt of the earth, he's not just talking about salt's preservative natures or its ability to enhance things or even the flavorful aspects of salt. He's talking about how salt has the ability to change anything and everything it comes in contact with, for good or bad. In our case, I hope this change is a good change. That as we strive to be the salt of the earth, we have a positive influence on people. But even Christ himself did not have a positive influence on everybody. There were people who rejected him. There were people who hated him. There were people who wanted him dead, and there were people who crucified him. We will strive to be the salt of the earth. Not simply to make things more flavorful, but to be a change. Salt changes everything it comes in contact with.
And I bring souls to Jesus by the service that